Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Today I'm doing a video. I guess been called a couple of different things. I've seen it called The Chosen Few and also 10 Desert Island albums. Same idea. Basically, if you were left to only keep 10 albums, or if you were going to a desert island and you could only take 10 albums with you, what would those 10 albums be? So I don't know who started the original thread, but I've seen a few videos on this. I think Hannah did a video. I think Bill did a video. I'm trying to remember who else I've seen. The channel Super Lova, I think, is his channel. I think a relatively new channel. So I've seen a few videos of this, and this has been done before, but it's always a fun one, I think, because it forces you to think, okay, what do? Do you pick your top 10 albums of all time? Do you pick sort of a wide variety of albums so that you have different genres to play, different things like that? So I'll admit that I started out thinking, okay, let's go the genre route and try and pick, albums from different genres, jazz, reggae, psych, things like that. And I started doing that, and then I quickly discovered that the 10 albums that I was choosing were actually from mainly bands that were actually in my top 10 artists of all time. And I think, that may indicate that there is a little bit of a variety in genre. At least, a couple of albums. They're not all rock albums. So I think that's what I ended up with. I ended up with a list of 10 albums that does cover a few genres, but mainly includes either artists that I have in my top 10 of all time, or at least in my top 20. Now, the first album is not from an artist that I have in my top 10, but definitely have in my top 20. And the one casualty by me doing it that way was Dire Straits, who is my fifth favorite artist of all time, actually didn't end up with an album on this list. But when I first thought, okay, if I'm ever in the mood for jazz, I need a jazz album, and I picked this album, which is Miles Davis' Kind of Blue. It's not my favorite jazz album of all time. I don't really know what my favorite jazz album is of all time. It might be something from Mahavishnu Orchestra, or even another Miles. I think I may actually like Bitches Brew better than Kind of Blue. But when I think jazz, and if I'm in the mood for just, straight ahead bop, I think of Kind of Blue. So I figured, on an island when you only have 10 albums and you're in the mood for jazz, go for something that is, sort of the quintessential idea of hard bop, and that's Kind of Blue. My next thought was, okay, I definitely need a reggae album on the island, and with Bob Marley being my favorite reggae artist of all time, and my third in my overall artists of all time, Exodus was an easy pick for me. This is from 1977, plays like a greatest hits, really. One Love. My favorite Bob Marley song is Jammin', which is on this album. This is just a classic all the way through. Three Little Birds, Jammin', Exodus, Waiting in Vain. Like I said, it plays like a greatest hits album. So that's the reggae album. Then I thought I need some psych, or psych/blues rock, and the first album that came to mind was Are You Experienced from the Jimi Hendrix Experience. It's my favorite Jimi album, and I think it gives me that sort of double dose of psych rock mixed with the blues rock. It ticks off a lot of boxes for sure. Gatefold. Okay, so that's the third album, and these are not in any particular order. They're just the 10 albums. And then an album that I saw on the list from Super Lova's video that I thought, yeah, you know what? If I'm doing my list, I've got to have this album on the list, and it's still in that psych blues rock vein. And my 10th favorite artist of all time Cream and Disraeli Gears. I have to have this album with me. This is an awesome album. I love Fresh Cream, their first album as well, but this is my favorite Cream album. So this and the Jimi Hendrix, kind of similar, but both amazing albums. So that's the fourth one. Then I thought I need a little bit of shoegaze in there, and I guess my favorite shoegaze album of all time is Catherine Wheel Ferment. Catherine Wheel was on my number 8 on my top 20 artists of all time. This is their debut album, Ferment. A little bit more on the heavier side of shoegaze, heavier than definitely Slowdive or My Bloody Valentine, but I do love this album more than I do any of the albums by those bands. So that's my shoegaze pick. Then I started thinking, okay, what are some of my favorite albums of all time? And my number 1 album of all time is the Stone Roses, their debut album. This is just another classic. I could not do without this album, so I absolutely would have to have this with me in my chosen few or on that desert island. And then my number 2 album of all time, which covers also, I guess, the British ska scene of the late 70s, early 80s, is The Beat with I Just Can't Stop It, or the English Beat as they were known here in North America. This is their debut album and by far their best. The Beat were my favorite of the 3 big British ska bands, Specials and Madness also included in that. And for many years, this was my favorite album of all time. So most of you will know the song Mirror in the Bathroom, but it just includes so many great songs, ranking Full Stop, some covers on there of Tears of a Clown, Rough Rider, so many great tracks on this album. And then I thought, you know what, I need an album on the island from my favorite band of all time, which is The Police. And I decided to take this album because I think it has that sort of early quintessential Police sound of the echoey guitars, a little bit of the reggae ska influence in there. I tend to gravitate between Zenyatta Mondatta, which is their third album, and Regatta de Blanc, and even sometimes Outlandos de Moor, their first album, as what's my favorite Police album. But it's usually one of those 3. On this particular day, I decided, it's going to be Zenyatta Mondatta. Great echoing guitars from Andy Summers on this. Sting's bass is very prominent in the mix. Stuart Copeland's drumming. Just all the Police elements I think are really combined quite well on this album. Casual fans will know Don't Stand So Close to Me and Da-Do-Do-Do-Da-Da-Da, but it's really the album tracks that really get it for me. Canary in a Coal Mine, When the World is Running Down, You Make the Best of What's Still Around, Man in a Suitcase, Shadows in the Rain, things like that. So good. And then my second favorite artist of all time is David Bowie, and I thought, I absolutely need a Bowie album on there. And then my favorite Bowie album also keeps changing many times, and I thought, on that island, what album would I probably feel most in the mood for? And I went with Low, 1977 classic Bowie album. I could have easily have picked Ziggy Stardust, Station to Station. It usually is between those 3 albums as to what I feel is my favorite Bowie album of all time. I just love Sound and Vision from this album, but the whole album is great. Even the instrumental tracks that have that sort of Eno influence on them. So yeah, Bowie, Low. And then the 10th album that I would take, I need something on the island from King Crimson, and more times than not, my favorite King Crimson album is Red, which was the 3rd album in the trilogy with this particular lineup, with Fripp, of course, John Wetton on vocals and bass, and Bill Bruford on drums. It could have easily have been Lark's Tongues in Aspic, or even Starless in the Bible Black. All 3 of those albums are just fantastic, but I find myself going for this album a little bit more than the other 2. Okay, that's the 10 chosen few albums for A Desert Island. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you later.